was more riding on it than just my personal.
It was Screen Junkies versus Collider.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was told in no uncertain terms that I was to win that match.
No, you lose that match.
No, that I was to win. That there was a lot of pride, but besides my personal pride at stake, and that I needed to go out there and win that.
Oh,
match.
right.
So that was a little extra motivation.
It was like Joe Louis and Max Schmeling.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to One-on-One with me, Kristian Harloff. Thank you for watching. If this is your first time watching, subscribe to this channel. If it's your first time listening, subscribe to this feed. Do whatever you got to do to listen to more interviews on One-on-One. Anytime we have a long-form interview, it's on this feed here or on the channel. Today is a very, very fun episode as I sit down and talk to my buddy Dan Murrell. If you watch Screen Junkies or you know whether it's the Screen Junkies show, on his trailers, of course, movie fights. The guy is a legend on movie fights, and he's a legend on the movie trivia Schmoedown. It's Dangerous Dan Murrell, who really goes into a lot. I mean, do we talk about movie fights? Do we talk about Schmoedown? Yeah, of course we do, but we really are talking a lot about him, who he was, what it was like, what his life was like growing up, where he came from, where he went to school, the kind of kid he was, why he decided to do what he did, how he fell into being in front of the camera. It was a very revealing interview, stuff I didn't know about Dan, and I'm glad that I did. He is one of my favorite people in the space. I say that often, and even more so after this interview with him. So take a listen. I hope you enjoy it. Leave your comments and hit Dan up. I think it's @MurrellDan on Twitter, and let him know what you thought of the interview. Have fun. Hello, everybody out there. Welcome back to One-on-One with me, Kristian Harloff. And we'll just start off and say that if you haven't been watching on the podcast channel, you can. You can go, a lot of these are on the main channel. Collider Proper, as the Afterthoughts guys call it, or you can find it on the Collider Podcast YouTube channel. But if you're listening, obviously you want to subscribe, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or anywhere that podcasts are found, really. If you're listening on your Android, go to Podcast One and do that. I have a friend of mine in the studio, not just a guest, it's a friend of mine. And we've been working together throughout the years now. I'd say probably almost like 6 years.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. And I say it every single time. I say it whether I'm talking about him, if he's not in the room, if he's in the room. He's one of my favorite people in the space. He's a good dude. He's one of the most honest people that I know. And I wanted. He actually reached out to me to be on the show, and I was honored by that. And if you watch the Schmoedown, I don't really have to give him an introduction. If you watch movie fights or honest trailers, I don't have to give him an introduction. He is the one and only, the former two-time movie trivia Schmoedown champion of the world and movie fights champion, reigning movie fights champion, Dangerous Dan Murrell. Hello, Dan.
How's it going?
How are you, my man?
I'm good. How are you?
It's good to sit down and just shoot the shit.
I know, right? Apologies if my voice goes in and out. I got a little throat thing, but this is gonna be fun.
Everybody has that stupid thing. I don't know what happened. It's like you don't know where you catch it from, too. I just always blame JT.
Nobody. You know what? I didn't think about that.
He's looking at you.
Yeah. I'm gonna do that too. I'm gonna blame JT.
Just blame JT.
Come on, JT.
I know, poor JT. He's the best.
He is.
He really. I mean, we had him. It was like that wonderful plague that Schmoes had, and then we passed him to Screen Junkies, and he's infectious. I love that, JT.
We love him.
All right, man. So let's talk about you, because we I think it was like 2-3 weeks ago, we had your lovely girlfriend Mara Kanopik on, the reigning movie trivia Schmoedown Geekdom champion. We had her on, talked with her for a bit, learned your whole story about how you guys met, and all. It was just fascinating. I had never really known that full story, and it was really cool to hear. But now we get to not only hear your perspective on it, but we got to just really talk to you in general. Where'd you grow up?
Born and raised in North Little Rock, Arkansas.
Southern boy. I mean,
yeah.
So you how long did you live there for?
Till I went to college, 18 years. Yeah,
18 years. So what was life like?
It's people hear Arkansas and they think farms and
that's
cows.
What I think of, yeah.
That's what everybody thinks of, because it's green acres. That's what people. It's like it's what I tell people, like, oh, what was it like growing up in Arkansas? It's like it was like growing up in Glendale, except there's no Los Angeles around. I mean, it's a suburban city. Culture-wise, obviously. Particularly with movies, it was not as vibrant as it is now. Now, this is back in the 90s. Since then, if you look at what Little Rock has done, they have their own film festival now. They have independent theaters. They've really grown culturally as a city.
Right.
But when I was growing up there, independent film stuff did not penetrate between New York and LA. You had to wait for it to come out on video.
Right.
So
you don't get the limited releases out there.
No, you don't. They do now.
Do they still?
They
Really?
do. You know,
Okay.
not when it's on like 10 screens, but when it expands out, now they'll get them. But back then, no. It's like I'd have to watch Siskel and Ebert, and I'd hear about this movie called Fargo.
Write it down and then remember it when it comes on VHS.
And then go to Blockbuster and see when it comes out.
Right,
you know.
Right. So, growing up there though, and again, where's your? Well, let's start first here. What's the family life like when you're growing up in Arkansas?
Yeah.
Parents together.
Single mom.
Yeah. Okay.
Single mom almost from the very, very beginning. But I had two parents. I always say I had a single mom, but I had two parents.
Did you know your dad? You have a relationship with him or not really?
Yeah. I mean, I saw him. You know, it's kind of major holidays.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, that kind of thing.
One of those things to where so when you were born, single mom from the get go.
Just about.
Okay.
From like 6 months.
Okay.
From like 6 months on.
Now I've always had these conversations with people who have single moms, single dads, and their philosophies on life obviously differ. What does that do to you as a kid? Like, is it just that when it's like you have a very good relationship with your mom? I would assume mama's boy.
Well, yes, and that I love my mom very much.
Yeah, but I mean, when she's the one that's really teaching you everything.
But she did not spoil me.
Okay, good.
In a good way. Like she
made you tough.
She was very much, she taught me things like personal accountability and fairness, and it wasn't this kind of thing of like I'm going to guard you from everything in this world. She was protective as a parent, but she let me make mistakes.
Yeah.
Because that's what you have to do when you're growing up. If you don't let your kids make mistakes, then they don't learn. They don't learn things, and the world can really hit them hard later on.
It's absolutely the truth, and I'm learning that too. I have a 7-year-old, and then the 1-year-old, letting her be.
Yeah.
Right now, everything is great, but so you're only child.
Yeah, only child.
Okay, so only child. So already within minutes, learning a lot about you. Only child. Single mom, and then what do you like in school? So and again, does your mom give you the kind of like got to do well in school, got to get you?
I mean, she certainly encouraged me to do well in school, and I was a good student. She would incentivize it, but not in a sense, it's just like, hey, if you get an A on your report card, you'll get $1 per A, things like that. Yeah. But I just always felt a need to excel. I wanted to be a good student. I think that. People have different motivations, and it's hard to get down to the bottom of it. But I always felt like if I am asked to do something, then I need to do that thing to the best of my ability.
You're still like that, 100%. You are like that.
So, but there was a time where in elementary school things came to me fairly easily.
You mean as far as book smarts?
As far as books, just like working, like I worked hard, but I didn't have to like. I was lucky that I didn't have to work as hard as some other people might have had to do to get an A in class. But I had a huge learning curve. It's kind of like a thing of like life comes at you fast. Like I got used to that, but when I hit high school, I had to work.
Yeah.
And it was the first time that I ever had to be like, okay, you can't just sort of rely on that things are going to come naturally to you. Like, no, you've got to apply yourself.
It's like your Schmoedown career.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to learn. Like, it was easy up until now, but like if you just coast by, then you're not going to be successful. And so it was that choice of just like, do I not apply myself and just allow myself to be kind of mediocre, or okay, buckle down and let's get to it.
Right. And so where does that come from, that drive that you have? That is that something that, again, from your mom, or just something that it was one of those things? I think it was
the example that I saw. I mean, my mom had every reason in the world to just kind of, I don't want to say give up, but give up. I mean, she found herself single, very unexpectedly. Can
you talk about what happened, or you rather not?
He left. My dad left when I was, I wouldn't say he left. My parents divorced when I was very, very young.
Okay.
And she found herself in a situation where I had a very supportive family, both grandmothers, uncles, that were, very supportive, but, day to day that can only go so far.
Right.
And I think my mom realized that she said that she did not want me to grow up, wanting for anything. Not that she would spoil me, but that she didn't want me to not have an opportunity that I could have, or to do the same things that other kids could do. She didn't want the excuse to be like, well, we can't afford it. So she went to night school when I was very, very young. that meant that she gave up her time with me to do that. She went from working at a bank as a teller to being vice president of that bank. She set an example for me of...
Who's watching you during that time, though? Because she's got to be able to...
well, when I was very young, she was with a guy named Scott, who was a really good guy.
Okay.
I don't remember him that much, but he really was there for her through those first few years, and they still keep in touch. And then, like I said, my grandmother... my dad's mom was local, so she would keep me 1 or 2 days a week. And then once I got into elementary school, I'd do after school care. And then I had friends. Like, I would go to friends' houses after school until my mom was off work to pick me up. But you
pay attention to that stuff as a kid. You know what your mom is doing, because there are different kids. There are some kids who take it for granted and don't see it. And then there's other kids like yourself who say, that's what my mom is doing. That's what I'm going to do. If my mom's doing that, well, I'm going to apply that to my life.
And that's sort of what she taught me, was just like, life is what you make it, and it's not always fair. But you can't just expect to be handed everything. Like you're going to have to work for it. And I saw how hard she worked, and so I think subconsciously in my mind, I wanted to do the same thing. And I think also part of it was the two of us. So I felt a responsibility to not be something that was an extra problem. It's just like I can make good grades, and then my mom doesn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, and it seems like you matured pretty fast, and you kind of have to at that point.
I did. My mom always tells a story about when I was about 5 years old. We went to Disney World. My mom, my grandmother, her mom, and me, and she talks about the fact that I was stressed that we were going to miss our flight. And she had to say, like,
I can see it.
She had to say, like, Dan, you worry about going to Disney World, and I'll take care of the flight. I'll make sure that we don't miss the flight. So I think it was this thing of like, I want to help. I want to be part of the solution. I want to be, a part of the house. You know, I don't want to just be a burden.
Right.
I want to help.
Yeah. And so you weren't. I don't really see you. Maybe you were, but I don't really see you as a kid that got in trouble a lot.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Because of those reasons, right?
Yeah. Again, it's just like, why?
My poor mother.
Yeah. No. It's. I really didn't want to disappoint her, because all she did was like. Was sacrifice and give for me. So why would I ever do anything that would be disappointing for her?
Right.
That just for me was just unfathomable.
I think that's where I was going more when I said the mama's boy thing. Is like you said, she's for obvious reasons an idol and someone who really kind of shaped you into the person I'm looking at right now. So and that's why I asked about your dad, because it's like, and there's also two types of people too, and you might fall into both these categories. Was there any resentment towards your dad, or like some like anger?
Not from my mom.
No, I mean more for you.
Yeah. I mean, she was so adult about the whole thing. Like, there were a lot of things that she could have been angry about, and a lot of things that I know now that she was angry about, but she never passed that down to me. She never let me see that.
Yeah.
It's weird because I'm there is, but it's not something that drives me, because I never knew anything else. Yeah. My relationship with my dad has always been the same. So it's not like we had this kind of relationship and then it went away or it changed. It was just
that's the way it was.
It's the way it was. Yeah. It's the way that it is.
When you got older, did you ever have a conversation with them, or not really? No need.
Not really. No need. Again, it's like, what's the end game in that, really? And we talk sometimes.
You don't need it though. Some people you say like for closure or whatnot, but for you, you didn't. You, like you said, you knew what it was. Yeah. From the beginning, it was you and your mom, and you always accepted that, and that's what it was.
And my mom also was really good at recognizing where positive male role models in my life would come in handy, and seeking those out. And luckily, I had those. I had those in my family. She had two brothers. There were people in the community, my friends' dads. Great uncles, other family members that, if there was a problem where my mom thought that maybe, there could be a positive male influence, then she would seek that out, or they would just be there for me.
And she knew good people, and that's the thing though too. You watch. I just mentioned to you before. I saw the movie Instant Family, right, with Mark Wahlberg, and it was a really good movie. And they it's not like cookie cutter. When they take these kids in, they take some of these kids that grew up with these parents, single mothers and stuff too, but they didn't have the type of strong mother that you had, right? They had the exact opposite. And you got to, and because it's like they had someone that was there for them, then they weren't there, and they, like you said, they didn't give up. I mean, these people did give up, and the children suffer for it.
Yeah.
And you were blessed in the fact that you have this really strong woman who shaped you into this person, again, that I'm looking at right now. And you can take a lot of that stuff. And the other question I have, though, too, is, and I assume that while your mom's working, she's got these jobs, and you're hanging out with your grandparents and these new role models. Yeah. Is that where the love of movies, so you start to watch movies all the time in your spare time?
Well, definitely on Wednesdays, my grandmother would pick me up after school. And from when I was very young, what we would do every Wednesday was we go to Blockbuster, or a video store, and I would pick out a movie. And it started out with like Chip and Dale, Rescue Rangers, and whatever cartoons, Disney cartoons. But eventually, that's the first time I saw E.T. I rented it one day after school with my grandma. That's the first time I saw Jaws.
Did she recommend it, or you just found it off the shelf and said, I'm going to try this?
I just found it.
Wow.
Honestly. I mean, I was so young at the time.
You were drawn to it.
Yeah. It's like, I don't even know how I picked that movie off it, but I remember E.T. was one, like, I saw it, and then we every week for like 3 months, I would rent E.T.
So E.T. was kind of the first movie that sucked you into movies?
It's the first one that was like, for me, I realized that there was something behind it. Right. That there was somebody makes these. Somebody, like, it's not just things on a screen, like, oh, there's people that write music for movies, and there's a person who makes them.
Right. That kind of always stuck in your head?
Yeah, it really clicked in my head as far as, like, when I talk about Jaws, it is my favorite movie, but E.T. is the one that was just, like, hooked me into, like, what is this? Because there's a lot going on here. Like, how does that work? Because I know, like, my brain knows that's not a real alien, but if it's not, then what is it, and how did and that just sort of kind of went from there. And so it went from renting cartoons on Wednesdays to renting movies.
Now, do you kind of push the limits a little bit because your mom's not around as much? It's time as far as what I mean by is renting stuff that maybe you shouldn't be watching?
No, not really. I mean, there's always a little bit of teenage rebellion, but my mom was pretty reasonable as far as R-rated movie. I have a big gap in R-rated movies because that was pretty stringent up until I was like 15 or 16. And then she would kind of say, like, you can see 3 a year, or if I see it first, then you can see it. But she was pretty like, no, you can't do R-rated movies. So that's why there's movies like that I didn't see until a lot later, like RoboCop and Total Recall.
You put them in your list.
I put them on my list
later.
And then went back later.
Yeah.
But I didn't push the limits too much. And she was also pretty fair-minded. I mean, I remember when I turned 13, PG-13 movies were always subject to her saying yes or no until I turned 13. And then she said, like, they're PG-13, you're 13, I can't stop you. And that's why I went to go see Beavis and Butthead Do America. Because she said I couldn't see it. And then I turned 13, and I was like, I'm going to go see Beavis and Butthead Do America. And she was like, you're 13. I can't stop you.
That was the deal that you made.
That was the deal that I made.
I love that. Yeah, that's really great.
And then rated R movies, as I got older, was sort of like, you can go see 3 a year. Or 4 a year, or if it's like a Saving Private Ryan came out when I was 15, she said, given the subject matter, that's okay. Yeah. But I remember I got one back one time because I only got so many R-rated movies a year, and I went to see Snake Eyes.
Oh my God!
That Brian De Palma movie with Nicolas Cage, and I was so angry that I had wasted one on that movie. And then she went to see it, and she came home. And she's like, "You can have that one back."
Yeah, it's just so funny. That shows our age difference because that movie I saw with an ex-girlfriend at Florida State. So
it was like 99, I think, 98 or 99.
98 or 99, one of those two. But that's and Gandolfini and yes, exactly. Yeah. Okay. So I do want to jump back to school for a second. What was, because you said you had friends. What was the social life like in school?
It was weird because I went to a magnet school 1st through 6th grade, and I knew there were a few friends that I knew. But then I went to for junior high, I went back to sort of my neighborhood school. So I knew some people, but then there were a lot of people that had been going to school together since elementary school for years. Yeah. So I wasn't really in on a lot of the social groups. And
that's hard to do.
Between starting in 6th grade, I was a fat kid.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So that's tough. That's really 6th was a little tough, but not so bad. Right. 7th and 8th grade were really hard for me.
As
just
far as what? People
I
picking
didn't
on you
know
and
a
stuff?
lot of people.
Yeah.
I knew, and even the people that I knew were in pre-existing social circles. Plus, you know, like I was bullied fairly aggressively
Because of weight and stuff.
because of my weight.
Yeah.
And so 7th and 8th grade, looking back, were the toughest years for me.
Yeah.
9th grade was okay. 10th grade was when I started sort of like finding my groove. I had my independence. I could, you know, like starting halfway through 10th grade, I could drive.
Right.
You know, but I had like, I would say I definitely had friends in 7th and 8th grade. It's not like I was a complete loner. I've had my same best friend since I was 12 years old.
Yeah, but that's tough. I mean, it's definitely tough for, again, that's why going back to what we're talking about, to where it also, because that's why I was mentioning like with your dad and then being with your mom, you know, the way she's taught you, does that also add into, because there's another type of kid that could get really, I mean, in general, the bullying problem has even amplified even more now with social media.
I can't imagine nowadays.
Crazy.
I cannot imagine
It's
because it didn't follow you home.
Right.
When I was at school, like, and really it didn't follow me everywhere. It's just things like gym class was a nightmare for me. You know, if I had a lunch period where I didn't have a lot of friends, that was a nightmare for me. But I had little pockets of time, classes where I had shared with my friends, and then when I went home, and that was
shut it off. You're not checking your phone and then seeing somebody making fun of you or something.
It didn't follow you home. And I can't imagine now if what kids are going through that are being bullied, because it just follows you everywhere.
How do you? So is it the heavy bullying comes in like 7th, 8th grade?
7th, 8th grade was the worst.
So high school kind of stops a little bit.
High school was better, both because you start refining your interests, and you start taking classes that are more specialized to what you want to do, which means that you're generally with people who are a little more on your wavelength, and you start becoming your own person.
Yeah. Do you drop the weight at all during high school, or not?
A little bit. I've never been happy with my weight. Okay. Never. But I grew up a little bit.
No one would call you overweight.
Yeah, but you know, it's. I think part of it is you always see the worst, version of yourself that you were unhappiest with.
Yeah.
And so I've just never been happy with it.
Yeah.
And I go up and down. Like I want to go. I got to a good weight a few years ago. I put on a little bit more. I want to get off. But I think part of it is you always sort of in your brain see that version of yourself that was sort of pushed around when you were a kid.
Well, dude, it's one of the things to where in general, that's why when you talk about, I watched Black Klansman last night, right? And just think, obviously the overall themes of that, but like racism it's taught. You know, these things are taught. And the other thing that is because you were taught emotionally in the 6th or 7th grade, 7th and 8th grade, that being fat was wrong. Being fat was this.
You're the other.
You're the other one, and you're the one that's getting. So emotionally, that's what you learn.
Yeah. And
then so fast forward years later, when you're looking in the mirror and you got a fucking thin face, you're saying, my face is fat, because that's what you see at 7th or 8th grade.
Yeah, it's you know, that's why I say, like, in a way I had it easy, just because, you know, you get away from it.
Yeah. Back
when I was in junior high, and now you don't. So I can't imagine how tough it must be, even if you're past that stage in your life, because it is something that I think that teachers, particularly in schools, are better about it now. But I think a couple decades ago, it was just like, well, you know, I mean, we'll put them in detention, but, you know, that's kids are kids.
They know how to handle it.
That's this part of growing up, and that's not. I mean, I'm glad that there's finally some attention to the fact that, like, it's not okay.
Well, it's serious. I mean, it leads to. I mean, it's led to some of these awful shootings. It's led to these things in general that have happened in our society, and people take it much more serious now.
And it can affect people forever, even if it's just subconsciously, or even if it's just that they're never 100% happy with who they are because they were taught by others at a younger age that they shouldn't be. You know, I don't think it's drastically affected my personality, but, you know, it does. You do carry it with you. There's always a part of it.
It's part of who you are.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, the flip side of I don't know if it was one kid or a couple of kids that were doing it to you at the time. There's one kid that kind of stuck out, but who the hell knows what that kid's family life is? Maybe you knew.
Right.
Maybe you knew. I don't know. But maybe there's shit going down with that kid, that what his parents maybe did to him, what family did, maybe his brother or sister or whatever it might be.
Well, and going back to my mom, I was also very lucky to have a mom who was aware of what was going on and involved. And, you know, she's the one that told me, like, don't place your value on what other people say.
Right.
Don't do that, because, you know, you are so much more than that. You're not, they're doing it because they're insecure. They're doing it because they don't know what to do. And so she really helped soften that a little bit, because she did everything that she could do to put it in perspective and say, like, you know who you are.
Right. You ever pop one of them in the nose?
No. I've never been in a fight in my life.
Really?
Never in my life. Not like a fist fight.
No. Not ever
never.
Close?
A couple times.
Yeah, but just didn't do it.
No, just didn't do it. I'm not. First of all, I don't think I have an aptitude for it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I would lose a fight with just about anybody that I got into a fight with. So I think I was smart enough to not get one.
I've seen you get fired up, though.
I've gotten fired up.
Yeah.
But no, never been in an actual fist fight. Cool. So I don't plan to.
Smart. Especially not at our age.
I think 35 years old is a bad time to start deciding you're going to get into fist fights.
I hurt my back parallel parking. I'm not fighting anybody. Okay, so then the hobbies in high school are what? I mean, obviously movies and stuff of that nature.
Yeah, drama tech.
Yeah, okay.
That entered the second probably biggest influence in my life, my mom being the first. The second being my drama tech teacher in high school, Miss Benson. She's the one who sort of shaped my outlook on who I want to be in context to other people, and in context to like exploring my own interests, who I want to be to myself in a lot of ways. So I did a lot of drama tech stuff in high school: stage, craft, lighting, stage managing, and then the TV class. I did that 11th to 12th grade. My senior year was almost all drama tech and TV.
And you just focus. It goes back to that initial focus you're talking about before. It's like you had the goal, you knew now what you wanted to do, and that was it. What about, because high school's a couple things. Yeah, high school's either find the friends, focus on going to college, fuck around and don't do any of that, focus on girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it might be. Yeah. And so what part of that? So you just focused on the work? Are you looking at, because that's when we start to realize, oh, this girl's running around. Yeah. You got a girlfriend in high school? No. It was just about the work.
Yeah. And I mean, I never saw much interest, and maybe it was there, I don't know, but I was very sort of people. It's when I tell people this, they don't believe me, but I'm kind of a shy person.
I can see that.
I'm not the kind of person that's just going to go up to somebody and start talking. And
you're a passionate shy.
Yeah, but people say that, like, oh, well, how can you be like, I see you do stuff, like that's not what an introverted person does. If you look into what introverted people actually do, it's very common for introverted people to be way better in front of a crowd than in front of three people at a party. Yeah, exactly. It's so I am actually a very introverted person. I'm not the kind of person that gets energy from being in a big crowd. I'm the kind of person that has that energy is taken out of me. And so I was just sort of doing my thing and working. That's where I learned how to edit. Was in high school. My teacher, Mr. Billings, was our TV teacher, and
such a teacher's name,
Mr. Billings. I know, but he was very forward thinking. He was always looking for what's next. Yeah. And
that guy doesn't grow up to be like a baseball player or work in a coffee shop. He's meant to be a teacher.
He's meant to be a teacher, Mr. B. And the first time I came to Los Angeles was in, I think, 1999, and he took me and two of the people from my class, and we came out here and we learned Final Cut 1.0. And he's like, nonlinear editing is what's happening in the future. We're doing reel-to-reel stuff. That's going to be dead in 5 years, and I'm going to take you three out to LA, and we're going to learn how to do this Final Cut thing, and then you're going to teach everybody else how to do it. And so by the time I was a senior, we had IMAX set up, and we were editing everything nonlinear Final Cut Pro, and that ended up being my career. So it's these little things that shape who you are.
Well, so I want to talk about that trip to Los Angeles, because I tell the story quite often on Collider Live or wherever it might be, that when I was in 7th grade, my mom took me to San Diego, my brothers and I, for like 3 weeks. We stayed, and I fell in love with California. And similar to what you're talking about with Blockbuster, how the movie's stuck in your head, California stuck in my head for years, and I knew that one way or another I was going to get to Los Angeles. I just didn't know how or why. Is that a similar thing? You take that trip with Mr. Billings to Los Angeles, and do you fall in love with it, or you just say no? You're just there for a job.
I mean, we stayed in Irvine.
Okay.
We were down in Orange County, so I think we visited LA a couple times. We went to like Santa Monica Pier, and then we went to like Hollywood and Highland. But we were mainly doing like workshop stuff. When I graduated from college, I actually said I'm not moving to LA.
Oh wow.
I knew one person that lived here. It seemed way too daunting,
Yeah.
and I wasn't entirely sure if I could make it, if I could have a career. It's across the country from Florida State's Tallahassee to Little Rock. That's a 12-hour drive, and it's a 1-hour time difference.
Yeah.
LA's across the country, and I graduated, and I was like, well, maybe I'll go to Atlanta. They have some video production there. I can kind of decide if I want to do that. And I was like, I like New York, but there's something in my head just said like,
go for it.
You dummy.
Yeah.
Listen, you've wanted to do movies and do movie stuff since you were 5 years old, and if you don't go, then you're just gonna, what are you gonna move to Atlanta and then decide in 3 years you're gonna move to LA? Well, that's 3 years of wasted time.
Yeah, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
So I moved out here. I said I gave it 2 years, and that was 13 years ago.
Wow. All right. Well, we definitely.
Sorry, it's very nonlinear.
It's okay. Because you're a senior in high school. You're one of the got to be one of the top guys in the class, right?
Top 10%.
Right. So
I slacked a little bit, if I'm being honest, in some of my classes because I wasn't that interested in them.
But in this group,
I have a problem with that. So.
Yeah, but in this group alone, you're like you said you're teaching kids how to do Final Cut, and
we all sort of learn together. Yeah.
Yeah, and they look at you as it's very similar with the way it is today. I'm sure that younger kids are coming up to you for advice, and you're showing them how to do it. You're making friends that way through this club. So, and this is your social circle now, and this is probably
very much so.
This is your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
So the comfort zone then leads to Florida State, I assume, right?
Well, Florida State, I wanted to go to NYU.
Okay.
And then I looked at how much it costs to go to NYU and realized that I would be graduating with $100,000 in student loan debt.
Yeah.
Versus I was a National Merit Scholar. So Florida State said, you can go here for free for 4 years. We'll pay you.
Look at that.
So I went down, but that wasn't the only reason. I visited a couple places, but I went down to Florida State and did the tour, and it just, I don't know how to explain it. It felt right. Walking around that campus, I was like, this feels like the college experience that I've always wanted to have. The atmosphere, the way the campus looks, the way that everything is set up. This feels like college to me.
Yeah.
So I was very late in the process actually, but I just sort of talked to my mom. She was like, "Well, do you want to visit anywhere else?" And I was like, I no, like this just feels like the right place for me, and it ended up being the right place. So.
And I want to talk a lot about Florida State because that's both.
Yeah.
Where we both went. Both my brothers went there too, and I have a lot of similar memories of what you just said. But the thing that I have to ask, because of knowing the relationship that you and your mom have, question one, how hard is it to leave her after all those years? And question two, how hard is it for her?
It was really hard for her, and I knew that. But she didn't show it. She really didn't, but I knew how hard it must have been for her. But at the same time, she very much, like the last thing she said to me before she left me at college was she just said, "Have fun," because she knows me and she knows like what I.
Don't worry about the flights.
Exactly. Don't worry about the flights. Yeah, she's just like be responsible. She's just like have fun, and that was her mindset. Was like, of course, I'm sure that it was really difficult for me, but she wanted me to. This was an important step for me, and she knew that.
She's not giving you guilt trips. She's giving you encouragement.
Never. Never.
That's
and
great.
So it was, tough for me. I think I went back home, like every college freshman. I went back home 3 or 4 times that year just because I'd never been away from home for that long.
Right.
But I mean, she was incredibly supportive.
In Florida State, especially from where you're coming from too, and I can tell you, I know that this is what happened to you. You felt like you're on another planet.
Yeah,
because it's like it is a totally different universe because the freedom, it's a different. Even if your mom gives you a lot of freedom, it's a different type of freedom.
It is.
You are now functioning as an adult, even though we really weren't adults.
No,
mentally.
I think about how grown up I felt that first year at Florida State, and I look back and I'm like, come on, you had your training wheels on.
That's exactly right, and you're walking around and you're seeing all stuff. And you went there. What was your first year? What year? I must see how much I missed you by.
2001. Fall of 2001.
My brothers were there when you were there.
Yeah,
my brothers were there when you were there. So
maybe we crossed paths.
I guarantee you did. I mean, if all the different places, that's really cool. My brothers were there, and because my last year was '99.
Okay,
that's when I graduated in '99. So you just missed me, but that's when I came out here. Mm-hmm. So, but yes, I found myself, and I found a lot of my friends, and really discovered who I was at Florida State because same thing. I came in. I came in from, I mean, I did a much different road than you. I went to a small college in New York my first year. Then I went to live with my dad in St. Petersburg and went to like this junior college for like a semester and then just transferred over to Florida State.
Yeah.
But when I got there, didn't know anybody. It was in Rice Hall. Is that the?
I'm trying to think.
Yeah, it was Rice. Maybe that's the one, right? It was one of the worst ones.
Sally? Is it Sally Hall?
It wasn't
maybe?
Sally.
Okay.
It wasn't Sally.
Yeah,
But Rice Hall may be getting confused with Iona. But anyway, it was off to say they've since torn it down. It's not there anymore. And I was there. I met some people there, people that I didn't really wind up vibing with at first. I joined a fraternity, and then throughout that, I met a lot of people. I actually started a thing called Thursday Night Fights, that and it had rankings, it had champions.
That sounds about right.
It sounded about right, and it was the same structure that I used for the Schmoedown, and it was very popular and very successful. Cops used to come and watch the fights. But anyway, the reason I bring that up is there's so much that I learned about myself. So with you, what do you start to learn about yourself? What do you like? Does the social thing change? What happens?
It was a repeat. It's weird. It was almost an exact repeat of what happened in high school. I knew one person, and then my roommate, who was really Greg, who was awesome. But it took me a while to make a lot of friends. I had some acquaintances, but my first year, I didn't really know anybody. My second year was a little bit better. And then once again, my third year, when you start getting into your major and you start meeting people that have the same interests as you do, that's when my junior year was when I started actually feeling like, okay, I've got a home here, I have a place
relating
here.
to people.
And my senior year was incredible.
Okay.
Because that was all the people that I knew from the year before. Plus, that's the year that you're 100% almost invested in exactly what you want to be doing.
Right.
That was, worth all of the finding my place things. Because when I got there, I was like, I want to get into film school. The Florida State Film School is
hard. I know.
Impossible to get into.
Too. Yep.
I applied 3 times and never got in.
Twice for me. Yeah. I did the theater school. That's where I went from. I went from film to theater.
I did media production.
Okay.
And through the College of Communication.
Yeah.
Again, I've had an incredible amount of lucky things happen to me in my life. The timing of that was such that back in 2004 and 5, film school was teaching you how to develop film and work on Avid and do all that stuff, which is an important thing to do. But media production was teaching you how to shoot on DV and edit on Adobe and Final Cut, and how do you do homemade production, and how do you do stuff on a low budget. And that ended up being exactly the way that a lot of production jobs took a turn toward. And it was like the birth. It was at literally 2005 was 2 years before like the rise of YouTube.
Right.
And that's how where so much work came from.
Yeah.
Was that sort of low budget thing. And if you knew those skills, you actually had an advantage over people that are like, well, I'm qualified to, do stuff with 35 millimeter film, but I've never worked on something this low budget. I'm just not equipped to do it. So the timing on that was really fortunate for me.
It's funny though you say that too, because like you said, and we'll get into you getting out here, finding the jobs, and ultimately landing into the career that you're in now. But like, the thing is, there are kids who are maybe listening to this right now, right, or at school, and their goals. And I've gotten many messages, as I'm sure you have too, of stuff they've seen on Screen Junkies, stuff they've seen on Collider. It has inspired them. When I get out of college, I want to get a job in this space. That certainly wasn't the case when I was in school, and it
didn't exist.
It did not
when
exist.
I moved out here.
YouTube started. I remember when it started in like 2005, when it really started to pop. I was working at Joel Silver's company at the time.
Yeah.
But when you decided, because you said you didn't know where you were going to go, but finally you told yourself it's Los Angeles.
Yeah.
That's where I need to go. Now again, same question. Mom, now I'm not, was it 11 hours for the drive?
12 hours.
12 hours from Arkansas. Now I'm not 12 hours drive. Now I'm going across the country. Now, same thing? Like,
yeah. She knew how much I love movies.
You got a cool mom, man.
Yeah, I do. I have a really cool mom.
Really cool mom.
She knew how much I lived, eat, breathed, slept, ate movies, and she was like, follow your dream. That's what she always encouraged me to do. Yeah. So she was, again, I'm not easy to have your son move across the country, but she was nothing but supportive.
Do you then, because like I said, because high school or grammar school, we know what happened, and then high school, you just start to discover what you love, but no girlfriend.
No.
College, no girlfriend at all throughout the whole 4 years.
Nope.
Wow. Okay. So then you fly, then you come out to Los Angeles. The reason I asked that too is because this is again focus in one particular thing, as well as not being comfortable
and lack of confidence. Very, very, very much a lack.
So the lack of confidence is there. It does shock me in a way because it's like there are people that you have interest of that you meet inside of your circle that you still just don't have the courage to talk to?
Yeah, well, I mean, when we say relationship, like no serious relationships,
right.
you know, you meet people, but I just never really had the confidence to ever take that, you know, as far as it's like, oh, should this be a relationship? I don't know. I got intimidated or scared.
But
like,
you went on dates
they don't really
and things
like
of that
me.
nature?
Yeah, I mean, I would go on dates and stuff,
okay.
but it's just like, I was just like, they don't like me.
So
I'm not going to.
You're looking in the mirror and seeing that kid in the 7th, 8th grade again.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, and I'd started to lose my hair at that point, and it's just like, so the weight thing was resolving itself, but an entirely new crisis of confidence was emerging.
That's tough in
so
college,
it's
man.
just like, it's like nobody. That's not happening to nobody else.
Right.
So I just was just like, whatever. I'm just gonna do what I do, and if something happens, great. But I'm not gonna, you know.
Right. Okay. You weren't searching it. So
no.
Right. But you were searching the career, and you go to L.A. Where do you go? What's the first thing you do? When you arrived to LA, did you have a job? Like, what do you just go out and you save up money? You get an apartment?
I got an apartment. I got when I moved here. Again, this is a recurring theme in my life. I knew one person.
Right.
But he worked for something.
How'd you know that person? From where?
I went to college with him.
Okay.
He was one of my college roommates. Okay. He was working with, and again, it's all timing. This is 2005, the rise of the web. There was something that is still ongoing in Los Angeles called Channel 101.
Okay.
It was started by Dan Harmon, who's gone on to do Rick and Morty and Community, and Rob Schraub, who he does like a lot of, he did Sarah Silverman program. He did a comic book called Scud the Disposable Assassin.
Okay.
But they were both sort of, had come to LA, had a bit of a bubble up with Heat Vision and Jack, which was the Jack Black, Owen Wilson Fox pilot. It was one of those things that got passed around on VHS because people were like, this is amazing.
I remember that, and I remember when Action, the Jay Moore show was getting passed around too. Do you remember that?
Yeah. But they had sort of had that bubble up, but then it didn't really go anywhere.
Right.
And so they both were just like, what do we do? So they started this thing called Channel 101, which is basically a mini television network. And every month, people get together and they watch 10 shows. 5 of them were voted back from the previous month. 5 of them are new ones. Okay. And then everybody watches them, and you vote, and then the top 5 go on. So shows get canceled, shows get picked up. People can cancel their own shows. My friend Rod had been working with Channel 101, so he knew all of these people. And through one of those guys, I got my first job, which was a office PA job for this ABC show called Emily's Reasons Why Not.
Okay.
It starred Heather Graham.
Oh, wow.
It was counter programming to, this was the first year that ABC didn't have Monday Night Football.
Okay.
So they were like, well, we're going to put on counter programming with this Heather Graham sitcom. It lasted, I worked on the show for 4 or 5 months. Uh-huh. We shot like
doing what?
Just working in the office.
Okay.
You know, so lunches and what to take in the orders and you name it, coffee, bagels. You know, just to go for.
Yeah, sure.
We worked on the show. The pilot had already been shot, so we were working on like the other episodes that were going to air. I think they made like 7 of them. They aired the pilot and they canceled the show after 1 episode.
Oh, sure.
So nothing that I worked on or that anybody worked on in those 4 months ever saw the light of day.
Yeah.
And that was a great crash course in how things can work in Los Angeles.
Right, of course, because you're probably painting when you first get the job, you're thinking all these great things are going to happen, and then it's a matter of okay, well, this is how it really goes down, and all right, so that hits you in the gut, but it doesn't knock you out.
No. Yeah. From there, I mean, I was a PA for a very, very long time. I worked at a company called Super Delicious, which did show they did a show called Mansers, which was like trivia for dudes.
About Scott Mance,
it was on no, it's not about Scott Mance. It was on the Spike TV network. Mansers, who's got the biggest boobs in the world? We'll tell you right now.
Right.
Hal Rudnick actually was on that show,
really,
and I had no idea.
Oh wow,
that's just it's
you
like
never
this
crossed
weird.
paths.
No, I mean I'm sure I'd probably seen the footage, but I wasn't working on set.
Sure.
And they did, they did like a lot of. Right now, they do like Halloween Wars now, and they do like kind of like cupcake Food Network shows. But I worked for them for a few years. worked on a farm for 3 months on this reality show, dating show called Farmer Wants a Wife.
You worked more in that farm there than you did in Arkansas.
Yeah, exactly. That was the most I was spent on a farm, was working on a reality show.
Right.
And I mean, it was a steady income for a real long time. It was kind of a gig job in the sense that, like, if they didn't have anything going on, there'd be layoffs for a few weeks at a time. But it was a pretty steady job, and I was actually post coordinator there. Okay. But I hit a ceiling after 2 or 3 years where I realized that I wasn't really going to advance anywhere past where I was. Right. And it wasn't really what I wanted to be doing. And so I just sort of, when the next gig came around and they're like, hey, the next one starts in a few weeks, I was just like, I can't. I think maybe I'm just going to move on. Now, the problem was that was in 2008. Yeah. And then the economy completely tanked. And there weren't so many jobs. So I bummed around literally for a couple years and just grabbed whatever random things. I was on unemployment for a while. Yeah, but because the economy had tanked, they weren't putting limits on it really. So I was able to just survive literally for about a year or two. And then I took a couple more jobs. I worked in a vault at a color correction place. This was the place that like took me to the long stories. This is everyone's career in Los Angeles. Yeah. I worked at a vault and where at a color grading company. And I was doing okay there. In about a year and a half, I'd worked up from just like just a guy who worked in the vault to a night operations manager. And I'd probably still be working there today, but you liked it? I hated it.
Oh, you hated it?
I hated every minute of it. Okay. It was miserable. Yeah. It was not what I wanted to do.
But good money.
It was good money. It was steady, and it was good money, and I was so desperate for a job that I came that close to just saying, hey, it's stupid to turn down a consistent career, and this is easy money, and this is you live in the real world. Right. You've been living in some dream where you're going to get a job that you love, and you need to be realistic and just this is how it's going to be. Yeah. And I hated it so much.
I feel like you have a lot of these inner monologues.
I do.
Yeah, because the thing is, like you said, you've had one friend for the most part to whether it's college or high school or out here. And I mean, now I know you very differently because of how we have met and the circle of people that you hang with or have hung with. But there's not, and especially now because we've like I said, we had Mara on a couple weeks ago. I know who you have in your life, but a lot of time you just have you.
But in the background to all of this career stuff, I continued to work with Channel 101, and I loved it. Yeah. Because it was just working with really passionate, funny people, and everybody's doing it for free. I mean, there were some jobs that got going. Rick and Morty spun out of Channel 101. Yeah. Rick and Morty was a Channel 101 show before it was Rick and Morty. So there were people from Channel 101 that would sort of get grabbed up as these shows would sort of spin out of it. But really, everyone was just doing it for fun. And over the intervening years, I'd been making stuff, and then I realized that maybe I'm not the strongest writer or director as I'd been making my own stuff. But I was like, man, do I love editing. And so I started editing more stuff. And so in the background to all this, I moved up to sort of producing the screenings and doing a lot of editing and doing a lot of special features and like mini documentaries and filler pieces for in between shows. Right. And I really loved editing. I just loved doing it. It wasn't work for me. It was like putting together a puzzle. And so I hit a point with that job where I was working where I hated it so much. I got my tax refund one year, and I found that I loved editing to such a degree that I was like, okay, I'm going to take one last stab at this. Yeah. And I took my tax refund and I quit that job, and I said, I'm going to be a freelance editor. I'm going to try it. And if this doesn't work, I don't know what I'm going to do. But through that, I edited Gen Air kitchen videos and a lot of piecework, a lot of just like, that's the gig work of just like, got to grab whatever. What do you edit? I don't care what it is. I'll edit it if you're going to pay me to do it. But through that, Brett Weiner, who worked at Break Media, had known me through Channel 101, had seen some of the stuff that I did, knew that I was looking for work, and said, hey, man, we're trying this new weekly show called the Screen Junkies show, and we're doing the first episode. Do you want to come in and edit it? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I took that gig, and then they did another episode. And
what
I took
year
that
is this?
Gig. This is 2012.
2012, okay.
Yeah, I took that gig, and then that became a weekly show, and then I edited a trailer for a Channel 101 thing, and Brett saw it, and it was just like, oh, you can do trailers. So he was like, do you want to try editing an honest trailer? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I took that gig, and then it was then I became a full-time editor.
So how far along is Honest Trailers? Because Honest Trailers is the bread and butter. It is what shaped Screen Junkies to what it is today. It's Emmy nominated. It's huge. It's millions and millions and millions of views. How far along is it, and what's the success like before you got to it?
They had done 7 or 8, I think.
Okay.
So,
and had they popped yet? The way that they,
yeah,
they did?
yeah.
Okay.
No, the Twilight had popped big.
Okay.
Transformers had done well. They were starting to transition it from here's a thing we do every once in a while to this could be a regular show. So I actually came on Skyfall was my first one, which I think was maybe their 12th or 13th trailer, something like that. And that was when they sort of said like, okay, we're going to do these every 2 weeks instead of just whenever we, want to. Right. And then eventually it moved to every week. So
then you're there now, and this is a gig now. This is my gig.
This is your job. I'm permalance, which if you don't that's a LA term, but it basically means I'm a freelancer in the sense of like I'm not an employee of the company.
That's what I was like a bachelor.
But they pay, but they expect me to be there every
right, and you're basically getting a salary. You just don't have the benefits and all that kind of stuff.
Which is you don't see as much of nowadays, but you see a lot of it. But yeah, so I was basically a full-time job. I just wasn't technically an employee of the company, which changed later on.
Okay, so that's happening, and that's when around that time is when I met you because you
Screen Junkies show.
Yeah, because you then became a producer of that show.
Yeah, as Screen Junkies grew, at the same time, the company that owned Screen Junkies at the time, Break, they hadn't really divvied everything out channel-wise. There was just one common writer's room for like everything. Yeah. So like there was like 4 writers, and they all had to write not only Honest Trailers, but like pitch for Movember and pitch this show, pitch 5 different shows. So like they were constantly just overwhelmed. And so at a certain point, they were like, I don't have time to do the Screen Junkies show. Dan, you're editing it. Can you direct it? Like, how you know each other, the rhythm of the show. And I'm like, yeah, sure. So that's when I met you. I started to kind of go in there when they were shooting Screen Junkies show just to sort of say like, hey, how can you retake this? Almost as an editor. Really? Like we didn't get that clean. Can you retake that and retake this? But then that moved to like producing and directing it.
Yeah,
which was super.
Well, that was the thing is that we always, and I think that's one of the reasons that we would click because I'd come in for these like the summer movie previews or the whatever the movies that we're looking forward to seeing. Yeah, and. You talk to people when you're not shooting, and as we were going over it, not just you saying, okay, we want to try to do this, go to this angle. It was more of, well, yeah, I saw this movie, and I like that movie. We start talking about conversations. I remember always saying to Ellis, Dan knows his shit. I was like, that was the thing, is that Dan really knows, how, the way this business works and what movies to see. Director is very knowledgeable, but you weren't on camera.
No.
Yeah, and it's like, and it wasn't something you ever even thought of.
No, you kidding me? I know. I was an editor. I was behind the scenes.
I know, and it's like, and now you're arguably one of the biggest stars that Screen Junkies, Honest Trailers aside, the stuff that you guys did with movie fights and Screen Junkies News and the Screen Junkies show. Some would say that you're the face of Screen Junkies. I will say that you're the face of Screen Junkies in regards to that type of stuff. And that's bizarre to you?
Yeah, because it was a complete accident. Yeah, I think maybe the first Screen Junkies show I did was. Something about Jurassic World, and it was only because the trailer came out and we were fighting about it, and they're like, let's just film it.
Were you nervous about doing it?
Not really, because there was no stakes. I was like, well, okay, sure. Movie fights was the game changer for me as far as like, people like, first of all, there's a lot of revisionist history going on because when I first started doing movie fights, people hated me.
Oh, really?
They hated me.
Really?
They're like, this guy is way too serious. He's arrogant. Huh. I still hear it a lot. He's arrogant. He's way too seriously. He takes this game way too seriously. He needs to lighten up. Like the first 2 or 3 episodes, that's all that I saw was just that. Really? And to be fair, going back and looking at it, that it's true. I had to sort of learn when to ease up off the gas because I'm super competitive. Right. I'm a really competitive guy and a really passionate guy. And so when I'm in this thing of like, I got to win this thing, it's like, I'm going to win. Right. Whatever means necessary. And I had to learn a little bit about scale and context. But I never thought like that was just an experimental show because they're like, hey, YouTube wants longer programming. So we're just going to do this thing for probably 10 episodes to the end of the year. We're like, okay.
And then it blows up.
And then it becomes what it is. And it's been insane from there. And then it's like, okay. People like movie fights. Is there anything else you want to do? And I'm like, I like movies and I like reviewing movies and I think I'd be okay at it. So then we have the premium network and they're like, okay, we'll try. Why don't you do your own show? I'm like, Sure. So I do a show for the summer. I start reviewing movies, and then that spins off into its own thing. It's super, like I say, luck is a huge factor in everything that's happened.
But it shaped your career. It shapes kind of how a lot of people know you in the space, and it gives you opportunities and things of that nature. I mean, again, listening to the interview with Mara, it's essentially how you guys became together because she was a fan of yours. She had watched you. She related to the way that you argued on movies, and you guys bonded over that and talked Star Trek when you guys met, which was really cool. And those opportunities came from being on camera. Now, you mentioned the network, the Screen Junkies Plus, right? Yeah. Now, Screen Junkies Plus, it was when. So, if you guys aren't familiar right now, we talked about it on Collider Live, and it's been out in the news. Defy Media, they sold Screen Junkies to Fandom. So, which has made you guys safe in what happened here. If you guys are reading the reports, that Defy is going under, and they're not. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess.
It's a mess. People just left completely high and dry.
Yeah.
People like Chris Stuckman, people like Mr. Sunday Movies that were through their MCM that were just are owed massive amounts of money, and I know YouTube says they've been working with them, and I hope they're continuing to work with them, but it is an absolute mess. Plus people like people that worked at Clever, people like Aaron Robinson, who did movie fights a lot, and that entire team over there, people who worked at Smosh Games, like everybody just like that, out of a job,
like a Thanos snap,
literally. But it was everybody, and it came out of nowhere, absolutely nowhere.
It did
in a way.
But when you look at that, because I always thought, I got to tell you, and we can discuss it. I don't think we ever argue, but I never understood Screen Junkies Plus for this reason. When it came to original content, I understood it, like stuff that you couldn't see. But everybody was doing long form stuff. Everybody like that you could get for free, whether it was here or in general. There was Schmoes was doing it, and the AMC was doing. You could get long form content anywhere. Movie fights, you can go. But when Chris Stuckman has a panel show, and when Jeremy Johns has a panel show, and you're asking for $5 for that, that's a hard model to sell.
Yeah.
And I think that and I know that they dumped a lot of money into it overall, because you got to get Johns and Stuckman and Andre. You got to pay those guys, right?
Yeah.
And that had to take a big knock in the knee to ultimately what happened.
Let me tell you. All right, I could do this now.
At this point, you're not an employee there anymore.
I'm not an employee there anymore, and there's no real company. Let me tell you about Screen Junkies Plus. That was a Defy idea in the sense. It was a hybrid. We saw that we were with movie fights. We were like, hey, people seem to really kind of be connecting to not just Honest Trailers, but to Screen Junkies and to some of us like individually. That Spencer had already established himself. Nick Mundy was a big part of the channel. Hal was always a very big personality. Everybody kind of had their own camp. And so we had talked about like, what are our options for expanding our programming? The main channel still doesn't really support a lot of programming, because there's a big chunk of people that are just there for Honest Trailers.
Right.
So there's discussions around like, do we start a second channel? And that's kind of what we thought we were going to do. We were like, okay, we're going to start a second channel and kind of spin out a bunch of different programming and try to do what we want to do.
Right.
And then at some point, this model came through where I don't know whose idea it was, but they're just like, these premium things, they kept talking about Rooster Teeth. These premium things are working, and we want to try to make some deals, strike some deals with different people. We want to do this premium network. We're like, okay. That's when things started to kind of go wrong. And it's weird because it's
Was it a blank check type situation, but just spent poorly?
Well, yeah, but it was a blank check, but also like I just think that the things were not handled well. The app didn't work.
Yeah.
There was going to be a release date, and it got pushed because the app didn't work.
Right.
And we knew the app didn't work, and Defy knew the app didn't work. And it's not necessarily, I wouldn't call it incompetence on the people that built it, because Defy developed that thing in-house, the whole thing in-house. They didn't hire a third party. They had in-house people developing that entire thing. And the functionality that they wanted from it and the different shows that it had, that's an almost impossible task.
It's hard to do. In that amount of time, too.
In-house.
Yeah.
With people that, that's like, they were really good, smart, talented people building it, but they weren't app developers. That wasn't their career. So the app didn't work. We knew it didn't work. We launched the thing. The app didn't work. We had a free preview weekend the first weekend. Didn't work. Nobody could watch anything for free. Didn't work. still, the first however many weeks of Screen Junkies Plus, the only narrative around it is the app doesn't work.
Right.
3 or 6 months afterwards, they do some market research and they sit us down and they show us numbers. What do people think of this person? What do people think of that person? What do people think of this show and that show? The numbers for every show, as far as the people that were watching it, were high. People are like, they might not like everything, but they're like, I like this show a lot. I like Stuckman's show. I like Monday's show. I like, Does It Hold Up? We're pretty high. The overwhelming thing that the users were saying, and especially the users that had left, was, I left because the app didn't work. Yeah. And they're like, well, we know the app doesn't work. And yet the app never got fixed.
Right.
Never got fixed. It was never functional. It never worked like it should have.
Why are they cutting corners on that? They're going out spending all this money on talent.
That
was the baffling thing.
And it's not. There was no one at Screen Junkies who was not doing their part. I know that there was advocating from every level at Screen Junkies saying, you've got to fix this. There were people saying, like, I will use your service if you allow it to be used with PayPal. And so we'd ask, when is it going to be with PayPal? We're working on it. I will use your service if you can make it compatible with Roku. When is it going to be compatible with Roku? We're working on it. Right. I will use your service if you can get an app for PS4 or Xbox. When is it going to happen? We're working on it. So much money was left on the table, and we knew 3 months in that this was probably not going to work. And yet we continued doing it for 2 years, partly because we had a very passionate core fan base that loved it and loved our programming, and that was great. To know that we were servicing the people that were using it and that they were enjoying it was enough for us, in the sense of, like, we didn't feel like we were wasting our time. But at the same time, it was very frustrating to know how much we were leaving on the table, to the fact that it just was never properly functional.
Well, and
it was so frustrating.
I'm sure it was. I mean, because especially when you're pouring your hearts out to it, the passion's going into it, everybody who's putting. I mean, and when I say that about the panel shows, it wasn't that they weren't good panel shows. It was just a matter that there were panel shows out there.
It was always meant to be. Not that you're going to sign up for one thing. It was always meant to be like, we're going to produce so many different kinds of things that if one panel show or whatever isn't your thing, we've got a game show for you. Right. And if you don't like the game show, then we've got a watch along. And if you don't like the watch along, then here's a more serious discussion about that. And if you don't want that, then here's a more jokey discussion. It was supposed to be like, if you don't like one thing, that's fine. Right. We're going to give you something else, and I feel like we delivered that as far as the programming goes, but it just was no one could watch it.
Yeah, and so nobody watched that, and so that's one thing. You guys do that for 2 years, and obviously as a business model, probably for Defy not the smartest thing, because you drain in money there to the people that they were supposed to pay, people that they did pay, things that happened and started going down. There's a big scandal that happens last year. We won't go too into that. So there's two things though now that really start to cripple, because before those two big things happen. Before that, you're kind of in the glory years. Movie Fights is hitting like 600,000 views an episode. Honest Trailer's crushing it. You guys are living the life. It's like
we're not making millions of dollars, but we're having fun.
But you're having fun, and it's like, again, you're going to cons, and the Movie Fights panels you can't. It's great. They're great. It's like you're getting recognized. First of all, before I'm going to go right back into this, first time you get recognized has to be really
bizarre.
Weird for you. Yeah,
incredibly bizarre. Like it literally went from one year, the year before Movie Fights started, or actually no, the year Movie Fights did start. I want to make sure. No, sorry. It was the year before Movie Fights started. Yeah. So Movie Fights starts in October. This is in July the year before. I would walk the floor with Hal every year, and we'd be shooting stuff. And so Hal would be because Hal was the face of the channel. Right. So people would come up to Hal and just be like, "Hey, Hal Rudnick, can I get a picture?" And I would be the guy that would take the picture. And then I just remember one time this guy's talking to Hal, and he's just like, "Hal Rudnick, oh my God, Screen Junkies, I love you guys so much. Everything you do is so amazing. Like I'm such a big fan." And Hal's just like, "Yeah, this is Dan. He directs and produces a lot of the stuff we do." And the guy just goes like, Anyway, I love the Screen Junkies.
So to go from Copster all the time.
To go from that in a year, to go from that to like people wanting to say hello to me is I still find it weird. Yeah, it's super weird to me.
Right, that goes back to it's your personality. I see it at the people. And we'll talk about before I let you out of here is that you're a Schmoedown legend.
My instinct is to downplay anything that anyone says about me. So I know, like you're awesome. I'm like, no, I'm not. Don't say that.
And you do that to everybody. It's
to my detriment, to be honest. Sometimes.
Yeah, and so but going back into it. So then again, those two things happen with the fight. The honeymoon period for those years where you guys are on top. It starts to pivot. Because the money's going out of Screen Junkies Plus doesn't work. Some could say it was bold, it was risky, and it just didn't work.
It was a big risk. It didn't work.
How different is the office though after Screen Junkies Plus? We said we're shutting it down. Because there's layoffs now, things are changing.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the other thing that happened is in the time that Screen Junkies Plus was happening, simultaneously, the entire online media industry was changing. Mm-hmm. It went from there are 30 power players to there are 300 power players. It went from there are 10 sites doing movie news online to there are 1,000 sites doing movie news online. Right. So, if you look at the views, new things would pop up, and then a lot of the established people, us included, but I think really across the board, views and stuff started dropping because so many people were kind of welcome into the space now that it was segmented. It was fractioned. There was new platforms. There was Snapchat. There was people going everywhere. Twitch. So, the Screen Junkie, they started Screen Junkies Plus like right at the beginning of that, which is they couldn't help that timing, but it's not great timing. Right. So, there were but the other thing is right around the time we ended Screen Junkies Plus, we started Screen Junkies News, which I'm very proud of. I think that we had a really rough start with news, and I feel bad because there was a lot of people that we brought on to work on the channel, producers and writers and stuff, and the site, which doesn't exist anymore, that were part of a vision that did not ultimately work out. As far as like how many times a day are we going to do videos? What kind of content are we going to do? And it was just, I think, a function of nobody really knowing what direction to take. And also, a lot of people I don't think were being listened to as far as I know what we should do and that not being taken. Right. I'm really proud, particularly since we came back last year. I think Roth is a great editor-in-chief. And I'm very proud of what we built on news because I think that it is unique in the sense of like it's the channel that we always wanted to make. As far as how we want to leverage our personalities, the kind of programming we want to make, but we weren't given the license to do that necessarily when it first started. So there were a lot of people that I feel badly about that. Like it wasn't so much a big blow right when Plus ended because we were bringing on a lot of people, and then a lot of people were just shifted over to do news programming. The problem was when we took the shift on news and decided we're going to go a different way. That's when we lost a lot of really good people that worked for us. Right. We had a great roster of oh my God, such an amazing roster of like correspondents and people that came in and worked for us that were just not used properly. I wish we could relaunch today with the vision and the freedom that we have with that group of people because it was Hector Navarro and Erica Ishii, Alicia Malone. Luckily, Daniel Radford is still around and works with us, but we had so many great people that we brought on that we just couldn't keep. Right. And, people don't get a lot of times, and I don't mean the people that worked with us, but public facing, a lot of times people don't get the realities of that, and they're like, a Screen Junkie sucks. They fired all these people. It's just like
there's money involved in all of it, man.
We have literally no control over that. Right. But we've definitely made mistakes, but I would also say that a lot of it is just like we are at the whim a lot of times of what people above us are saying or doing.
But you dodge a bullet in the sense that again, we have friends over at Smosh, we have friends over at Clever, and they like just got yanked out of nowhere. This report comes out that hey, they're done, they're shut down. But you guys dodge a bullet because they sold you guys over to Fandom. Fandom now houses you. Now I saw this on Movie Fights yesterday. Yeah. To where you got by the time this comes out, it'll be a little more. But the episode I saw was that you guys had mentioned you're going to be looking for a studio because
we have a different suite of offices, but we're, not that far from where we were with Screen Junkies when we worked for Defy, but we're still looking for where are we going to be permanently. So we were still using, through an agreement, the equipment and studios that we were using before. That's why Movie Fights and Screen Junkies News, they're all in the same place. But now that Defy is no longer or is definitely not in the form that they currently were, like we are now in a position where we don't know how long we're going to have that space. Right. So we're right now currently saying like, well, we don't want to take weeks off of programming. We can't do that. So we're now looking like, well, where can we do our shows from? What's a permanent solution? What's a intermediary solution? So that's the thing that's kind of been visited on us from this whole thing with Defy. Yeah. But really what we're thinking about the most is like, we know so many people that are just gotten completely screwed over by this, losing their jobs, losing their ad money. It's insane. Like it is incredible the amount of people that this is impacting in an incredibly negative way. And for me, I can't say it's hugely shocking, but I never knew that there was a capability that it would happen to this degree.
Yeah, and it just goes back to leadership too. It's bad business, and I'm glad you guys avoided it. And I know that a lot of those people will land on their feet. It just sucks that it happened to them.
It does. I mean, if Fandom has been great. I mean, Fandom has been very willing to experiment with us and to say, here's what we know and here's what you know, and we're going to trust you to know what you know, and then we're going to see, we're going to have a very extensive conversation about where we merge and different ideas and things that we can spin out, but they're not rushing into anything. They're not, just yanking things left and right. Like, it's been a really great relationship with them so far, and we're super lucky because if Fandom hadn't bought us, I mean,
you've been part of the three.
We would be on the street right now.
Yeah.
Every single one of us would be out of a job, and Screen Junkies would be on the block with Smosh and Clever. But the problem is, nobody knows who or when those are going to be bought, or if.
Right.
And that's awful because those are great brands, number one, and
that
great people behind those brands that built themselves from nothing.
I'm sure that something's going to happen with those brands. They're too big not to, but it's just unfortunate the way that it happened.
Yeah.
Now because we're running down here, but before we go, I'd be remiss if I don't talk about your career in the movie trivia Schmoedown. It's been a ride.
It has been
a long ride because for those of you who don't know, that Dan Murrell was one of the first guys that I really reached out to. And so the Schmoedown now we're approaching our 6th season. We're in the midst of season 5. Season 2 was the team tournament, and we were still over at the AfterBuzz Studios. I believe you guys were doing movie fights at the time there. Maybe not. I mean, that's where it started.
If we weren't, it was very close to the
It was like right. We started the Schmoedown, and I think movie fights started like 4 months later or something like that. Whatever. So, but no. You know what? During the teams, I think it probably already started because the singles was 2014.
Yeah.
So anyway, the teams then start. You come in with Mark Riley.
Team champs.
Team champs. You play. You win your first game, and in the second one, you lose to Matt Nost and John Rocha.
The four of us.
And that's where it begins. But it's a very different thing back then.
Yeah. I still remember this. I still remember why I kicked myself for that match. Because the question that I didn't pull that we lost on was what David Arquette. It was about a David Arquette movie.
Yes.
And the answer was 8-Legged Freaks.
Right.
And in my head, I thought for some reason that you'd said David Kep.
Oh, okay.
And so I was thinking on the completely wrong track. And I'm not saying I would have come up with that answer, but I think if I had heard correctly David Arquette, I might have. And I still think about that.
It's true. Well, look, and the rules were so different back then.
Yeah.
There were no JTE rules. There was no 2, 3, 5 pointers in the third round. It was betting round was the final thing. It was a very different league back then. And then I call you up in 2016 and I say, look, man, I'm going to start the Schmoedown. I'm going to put it on Collider. I want you to be my first match, and I want you to face John Campea in a one-on-one. And what people don't realize is that the whole wrestling angle that eventually started, it really begins with those 2 promos. Like, because you're not the guy that's known when you look at the Schmoedown as the character guy or the guy who's going to talk a lot of smack, but if someone pushes you in a smack talk battle, you're one of the best. I mean, because you did it brilliantly against Rocha in your battles, but it was that opening thing with you and Campea that really started to sell that first fight. I think it's over like 300,000 views right now.
I remember there was one, it's still on my YouTube channel. The first promo I ever did was John had done something at home.
Yeah.
And I was with Mara, and I showed her, I was like, can you believe that? And so I just remember I called him Joe.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, Joe. You want to, I was literally walking around my apartment.
Yeah.
And that was like the first promo, I think, like between 2 people on the new iteration of the Schmoedown.
It was the one that shaped what it got my wheels turning because Jonathan Voitko, who was the editor who cut it at the time, I said, look, this is great what these guys are doing on social media. I was like, take both of these and let's cut some music behind it and put it, and then it started to shape. I mean, now they're like so elaborate, but it started that. So when you saw that, did you know right away what I was going for?
Well, I remember it came out the narrative I remember because it came out the same day as Batman v Superman.
Okay.
And so people were like, "Oh, this big thing." Not for nothing, by the way. There was a lot of pressure put on me to win that match by third parties.
I'm sure
that I was told that there was more writing on it than just my personal.
It was Screen Junkies versus Collider.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was told in no uncertain terms that I was to win that match.
No, you lose that match.
No, that I was to win. That there was a lot of pride, but besides my personal pride at stake, and that I needed to go out there and win that.
Oh,
match.
Right.
So that was a little extra motivation.
It was like Joe Louis and Max Schmeling.
Yeah. So I'm just saying I had a little extra push to go out there and do well because it wasn't like you're fired, but it was just like you can't lose this.
Well, because people don't realize too, it was very different in 2016, you could rival me on this if you want. I don't think you will, but I think in 2016, even though publicly it was always like we're friends, and we definitely were friends. But there was definitely a camaraderie between Screen Junkies and Collider at the time, and because of whatever leadership or whatever it might be, that's what it was. I don't feel that that's there now anymore. I've
never seen people like to build it up into a rivalry.
Yeah.
It's like we're two companies that happen to work in the same space.
Yeah,
but it's not like.
But back then it was different though because of what you said.
The competition was emerging.
Yes,
in the sense of like everyone was just like, what do we do? We're all competing for the same.
Yes, but it's like when you come over here now to compete, no one's saying you got to win that match. It's not like that anymore.
No.
It's not a Collider versus Screen Junkies thing anymore. We're all in the space. You're as much a part of the Schmoedown, as a face of the Schmoedown as John Rocha is, who works here. So it's like it's different, but it was different back then. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. And it wasn't the kind of like now it's like it's easy. It's just like, hey, a lot of people watch it, so you could go represent Screen Junkies in Fandom. Like, awesome. But I don't know. It's kind of crazy what it's grown into.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, and it's taken me by surprise. Obviously,
yeah.
When I was gone, what even happened? So I never thought that it would be what it is. I mean, it's I don't know how you do it. How do you do it? Like the amount of things going on. By the way, storylines centered around events over which you have no control.
Right.
I don't know how you do.
You got to write too. I mean, I related to you before when you said you liked editing so much because you're putting together a puzzle.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Okay.
It really, just think about it in those terms, to where it's like, so perfect example, and we'll talk about it briefly, like the collision match. Like I was, like everyone else. You watched my face during that match. I, like everyone else, thought you were going to wipe the floor with Andrew Guy and then come in. And I was like, okay, so my next live event, I'm going to have Dan Murrell and Sam Levine, the two guys who was the greatest. We'll put the title on the line. It'll be a live event. I can see the awning. And then I literally saw the awning on fire. But it also shows the two things. One, I never fixed the game.
Yeah.
Two, it's how unpredictable it is. And three, what people don't understand about that match, and we'll just get right into it now.
Sure.
You had so much pressure on you. There was, and I'll say it if you won't. There was so much pressure on you because it is unfair sometimes because you had such a dominant run in that first one, going 5-0, beating some really good guys. Then you come back at the collision, you win it again. You retire 7-2, and you're like this mythical figure that who the hell can really hold that up? And then you come back, and it's like, oh, he's going to just crush him. And you come here, you haven't played in over a year.
Yeah.
After the big build-up we do at the live event, there's 100 people just in the audience here watching, and then knowing that there's going to be thousands of people watching. You can visibly tell that it was very different from what it was from the beginning for you.
There's a lot of components to it. Number one was I mean, people had told sorry, but I had not kept up with the Schmoedown in my time away. I didn't know.
There's a lot going on the other side.
I didn't know who Guy was. I honestly had, not in the sense it was like, oh, who is this guy? I literally didn't know.
Right.
All I had been told was like, oh, you're gonna crush him. I'm like, okay. The night before, which was stupid, was the first time that I actually went back and watched him play. And I watched like his last couple matches, and I turned to Mara and I was like, this is not somebody who I'm just gonna roll over. Like he knows some stuff. Yeah. That was number one. Number two, you're right, was the expectation. Like I was standing backstage before we started and listening to you and Mark talk, and Mark's just like, yeah, round two, if we even get that far, it's gonna be blah blah blah. It's like, this is gonna be, I mean, this is the comeback of the greatest player ever. This is David and Goliath. And you can ask Rocha, Riley, and Inman, and notice I turned around to them when you guys were talking, and I said they're teeing me up, man. And I leaned over and mocked putting a tee and a golf ball in there. I was just like, I am getting teed up. And I told them before the match, I was like, I got a bad feeling about this.
Really?
It's too perfect. It's too perfect a situation for a guy to win and for me to lose. That was the second component. The third component was the fact that I just flat out didn't know the answers to what I was asked.
You caught bad runs. That opponent's choice.
Opponent's choice on the wheel. I hit that like 4 times this season. And it's just sometimes you know the questions and sometimes you don't know the questions.
Right.
I didn't know the questions. That's another thing. And then the other thing that really caught me off guard, I did not know how the game had changed. Before, like, I played Rocha. I played, like, in my mind, I'm like, I've played the shit talkers.
Right.
I know how to do this.
You had never played an actual character before.
No, because Rocha, he, on the mic before the game, he is on fire.
Right.
But then you walk out and you play the game. I was not used to the fact that I would be sharing the ring with a character.
Right.
And it really threw me off my game. It really, it took me by surprise, if I'm being honest, just because there was a certain decorum that I was used to that was not there. And so as I told you, I'm very competitive. But I was also a kid that was bullied when I was young.
Right.
So,
and he is the Andrew Guy character is the epitome of a bully.
Right.
Yes.
So there were a lot of survivalence, and I'm losing a game, and it's hard to explain the sight of me sitting at the table and looking at the audience, and not just when I started losing, every single answer that I got wrong, people were just like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" And like, I'm just like, I'm getting questions wrong, and then I get it wrong, and I'm looking out there, I just see like faces just going like, "Oh," and then people like laughing, and it's just like I was completely caught in the headlights, and then I got this guy over here, I don't know what's going on, and I got like other survival instincts that are kicking in, and I just it was a complete catastrophe for me on every level.
And such a different pull when you go back in time here, and we go to, again, the Campion match happens and you win that convincingly, to where that was even before we created it was then retcon to give you the TKO,
right?
But at the time that we didn't have TKOs, we didn't have knockouts, we didn't even know what that was yet, and then you beat Scott Mance, and then you get a shot at the title, and that's when I think you were the Screen Junkies movie fight champion at the time. Now, because the championships now, as you know, people take them very seriously.
Yes.
The team championships, the Intergeekdom champion, all of them, the Star Wars championship, they're taken very seriously. And at the time, the movie fights championship was another one people took very serious.
Yeah.
So when I tell you, you're gonna, and again, you're competitive, and you've been champion in one league, and for that same exact reason, to where you got to win this fight against Campia, it's like, take the belt home from Screen Junkies, as I'm sure was part of the conversation too.
I mean, not so much.
No.
That.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I think it was just more like for that first match was just like, you're our guy,
right?
And they're putting out their guy, and so you need to go out there and beat their guy,
right?
Okay.
And you did.
Do that.
You did it, and then some. But you win. So the championship match against Riley is really where you. Because Riley was a dominant champion. He had never lost before. He was 5-0 going into that match with you. You beat him. You guys are since really close friends. Remember the Horsemen together? And that match, I think, then shifted. I remember driving to Screen Junkies because again, this is something I learned from doing Thursday Night Fights. Mm-hmm. If you've got to take whatever you're doing as serious, that's why I don't really, when you said that fans were getting on you for taking it so serious, the first couple. It's why you're as good as you are, though. It's why people look at you now, even though you might have done some adjustments. It's why you are like the most pristine fighter that has ever been there before, and it's why you're here, because you do take it so serious. And it's the same reason I drove that belt out to you. Because I said, okay, I'm going to present the championship. They still have that picture. I think it's on the Patreon. Actually,
that's right. In our office.
Yeah,
that's right.
And I'm handing you the belt because it was a matter of, we're proud to have you as the champion. The belt does mean a lot, and if you don't take it serious, then the audience won't take it serious. Mm-hmm. If you treat it as if every storyline is the most important one that you have, and every character and every fight is the most important one you have, they will see it the same way. That is just the way you have to run your league, because if you don't take it serious, no one else will. Because yes, you could just say it's just a movie trivia show. Mm-hmm. Then that's the way everyone else will see it.
Sure.
But if it means something to other people, if it means something to you, then that's when you've got a formula.
Yeah, and I think what's emerging is, and I think there's been some bumps in the road, certainly for me, is the sort of different kinds of players that the Schmoedown generates, which is that I think you've got people like Guy who are great characters for the show, and that's not to say that he's not. He knows a lot of stuff, but like he's a great character for the show. And then you have shades in between that, and then I think there's people like me. And I kind of get this vibe from Rachel Cushing and Clark Wolf, who take this game extraordinarily seriously and don't necessarily jibe with the other side of the spectrum. So I think that's the learning curve that's happening right now, is the people that are playing the game, and it's like, like I'm here to play the game and I'm here to answer questions. And then the people that are like, I'm also here to do that, but I'm also playing a part. And I think that's the oil and water sometimes, and that's everybody's navigating is like, it's like merging two different sports.
It's exactly right. Well, I mean, again,
it's like putting a WWE guy in the ring with like a Greco-Roman wrestler.
It's you with a UFC fighter
trying to figure out how to do
it. Like the UFC fighter is going to come in and just wants to do the fight, and the wrestling guy wants to cut a promo. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
That's what it is, and I think people are getting used to it in each. And I think team action. So where you and Riley and Rocha, you guys are like the old school players, right? You've been through all of it as where action came in as characters. Like it's the evolution of these guys who have become characters. And you also, Andrew Guy, Mike Kalinowski, John Rocha, actors. Yeah. So they get it. That's what they do. So we're going to see that. And we're going to see that evolution. It's also on the management to also make sure that we navigate to say like, okay, look, this is what's going to happen inside of this. Be prepared for this. This could happen. And you got to prep people because that's ultimately what it's going to be if we want to keep growing it. Like the Horseman moment was incredible at the live event.
That was incredible. That was like. Man, that was amazing.
And I'm sure
incredible.
I mean, because I remember, so people don't know, and again, just because I know how much time we have here. Dan had played in 5 straight matches before he had lost. He beat Mark Ellis in a very underrated match.
That was a great match.
Such a good match, very underrated, back and forth. Go and watch that match. It was Schmoedown Spectacular won the main event. Then you play Rocha in what people still say is one of the best title matches of all time. We changed the rule afterwards because if it would have been, because it went from it was the first question in round 5. At the time you played was only worth 1 point. Had it been worth 2, it would have been sudden death.
Of course, naturally.
So I know it was Joe Dante. So that match. One of the biggest rivalries. You guys are now teammates. Yeah. Who'd have thunk it? And then you come back. You have a great free for all, amazing free for all, and you get a shot because of the past stuff that you did. You get a shot. You beat Riley and Rocha in that collision match, which is one of the best things that has ever happened as far as just big main event that delivered. Sam Levine, people don't realize that you and Sam have played before.
That's true. A lot of people don't seem to remember that.
They don't remember it. And you beat Sam, not even to a 5-pointer. You had just played, and that is not easy to do. To play, first of all, 2 matches in the day, 2 matches back to back, very hard to do. You do that, you beat Sam. You and I have a very strange match.
That was a very odd match.
Those were some of the hardest questions.
Those were so hard.
Ever.
Like who played Paul Bunyan and the tall tale or whatever?
You and I looked at each other and once like, what is happening? You surprised me. People ask me all the time if I knew that was coming, that you were going to retire.
No.
I had no idea. You sprung on. I mean, I joke in the match, and I go, shit. If I would have known you were going to do this, I would have lost. And then you step away.
Yeah.
Now getting you back was interesting because you had approached me at one point, and it was actually to even flip to that. The end of that, when I'm hugging you, I say I'm gonna get you back, and then you told me afterwards, you're like, we'll talk next year and see how the free for all is looking.
Yeah,
because I think the free for all always stung you the way you went out against Andreyko. But so free for all, what was supposed to happen was you were legit supposed to come back for that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a little bit of an element that made Guy a little bit tougher for me. And nobody knows if you're okay with me going into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was the Jaws music at the free for all was supposed to be me.
Yeah,
I love that event and I was looking forward to it. And a few days before that happened, I got a call that my uncle had died, and he was when I talk about my mom and the people in my life who had a huge influence on me, he was like one of the ones, and particularly in my movie. My love of movies. We would every holiday season, every Thanksgiving. That was our tradition. We would go see 2 or 3 movies together, and every time we talked on the phone, we talked movies, and he passed away very suddenly, and I had thought that maybe I wanted to go out and play for him, and it literally his funeral was happening at the exact same time and date as the free-for-all. So I couldn't do it. And that was also part of my sort of, I didn't know what was happening.
Right.
I didn't know what had happened. That was part of my confusion with the whole guy thing was like, not only did I not know who he was, but then I heard like, oh, well, he came out and said he killed you. And I'm like, what? What? Huh?
Right.
But I think a part of me was sort of like, well, I've told you this. I shouldn't logistically and just intellectually, I should never have taken that fight because I was a no-win scenario. There was no way I would not. All I could do was lose.
Right. Well, I mean, because if you won, you were
I was
expected
supposed
to win. Yeah. The idea behind it, as a promoter side of it too, was that Guy is a big character, a huge character. I could promote it in the way that we did.
Right.
The promotion leading up to it, I took out Dan Murrell, the hey, this, that, the Horseman thing that went off perfect at the live event, his promo and everything too. Yeah. The promotion of it, everything went according to plan. And I've told him this, and I tell you this, I grossly underestimated Guy. Yeah. And I thought, we don't need Guy to win. We just need Guy to talk shit. And then Guy's 0-1, and I can put him up against anybody. Right. And there he goes. And I was like, I always map out, but what if the other person wins? I didn't do it for this fight. I just didn't fathom it could happen. So I just was planning the Levine versus Murrell match. Yeah. So it wasn't a matter of like a no-win situation, because it was just like, just give him another. He gets another win. He goes in, and now he's 8-2 against Sam Levine, who's having this run, and it looks sexier with 8-2 and this and this. Yeah. So yes, in hindsight, putting up against a guy that could win that fight, probably not the best idea for you. Yeah, and I think part of it, because I took that really hard. Yeah. And I think part of it was that it is still in my brain tied a little bit to that. As far as, the reason that I was not at the free-for-all, and the reason why it all happened to begin with was because I was grieving, a very dear family member. Now, I now have transitioned to, I think about him now, my ritual now is I think about him before I play, because he would never want to be a painful memory to me. Yeah. So now, before I play, I think about him in the context of how much our relationship informs how much I love movies, and what I love about playing the game, and what I love about movies in general, because it was such a big part of it. And so I've sort of been able to turn that from a very painful thing to something I used to motivate me, and honestly something that I've used to put this game in perspective, because that's what's important in life. Is those are the things you need to take seriously. Right. And so it's been a bit of a journey, but a lot of it is sort of I now he's something that I use to sort of center myself before I play, and just say, you win it or you lose it. It's fine. Well, I saw that, and I saw it so much in that game and the post-interview for the corruption match. Yeah. Because it was a fantastic match. People are talking about that team match, sudden death. The controversy aside, that it was just one of the best played matches on both sides. The vibe between you and Rocha working so well, but it was that post-match to where John was upset. Mm-hmm. You were just kind of level to basically what you said, and I loved it. It was just the same way that this guy was here for me after that loss. I'm going to be here for him and it's essentially what you just said just now. Mm-hmm. It's putting it into perspective, because it makes me excited to see what you're going to do in this tournament coming up. We are a week away from the singles tournament, and you're playing Stacey Howard. Mm-hmm. Stacey Howard, you have history with in the live event, and
Yeah.
she almost single-handedly, because Winston admits he just didn't have a great game,
Sure.
and she kept them into that game.
She's great.
She's really good.
She's really strong, and that's why, you know, when I see people talking about, like, you know, the hype and stuff, the other brackets were announced, and the hype is just like, oh, well, no, Dan Murrell versus, like, no one should ever say that any match is a walkover, but especially not with Stacey. Like,
Right.
he was like, well, Dan will beat Stacey. Like, no, that's not. Don't say that, because the last time somebody said that about me, I lost.
Right.
So if part of me is just like, I would say to the fans, just like, you know, like, learn from the game. Like, don't ever
Anybody can win.
ever discount a competitor.
Yep.
Because anybody can win.
Finstock could hit Sly and Arnie on
Yeah.
you, and he's going to have a good shot.
And then he wins that game.
Right.
So I mean, even if Stacey was a complete unknown and had never played the game before, I would say, you know, like, don't ever discount anyone, but especially because, like, it's not like she's 0-8 in this game.
No,
like she's played well.
She's
and
been in number one contender matches before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
She took down Ellis,
She did,
right?
yeah.
She certainly. I mean, if you go point for point, I would say she probably either outplayed both John and I, or was at least right there with us.
She was the whole reason that team had a chance to beat you guys at the live event, for sure. So she definitely is not someone to take lightly, and I know you're not. But so there's two scenarios in this tournament here. The one is the obvious.
Yeah.
You win this whole thing. You played John Rocha for a record third time. To become the 3-time champion, which I know is something you're aiming for. Or the other side of the scenario is that people don't know it yet, and we can talk about it here. It'll probably come out by the time this comes out. The two semifinalists, whoever that lose, will also have a chance in the a chance to get to the number one contender match.
Right.
So whoever loses the finals. So there's a chance for you to get that third title. I assume it's going to you want to do it against Rocha.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, that's like the storybook ending is, you know, you go from losing your first match back to having a chance to come back and play at the end of the year against the guy who you were on a team with earlier that year, who's
and who
also
took the title
in your
from
faction,
you.
who took the title. Of course, that's
it's a great
the story. That's what I want to do.
Right.
But
and if I was writing it, that's what's going to happen.
But there's a
Who
lot
knows?
of people between me and that. So, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in between it. Stacked this year. This is your first singles tournament ever.
It's a crazy
stacked.
amount of people.
So listen to this, guys. This is the rundown. I'm going to let Dan out of here. The rundown for it. On one side of the bracket, you got Mark Andreyko and McWeeny. Quick pick on that. Who you got?
Oh my God. Between those two,
Yep.
I mean, that's a 50-50 match. I might just say McWeeny.
Okay.
Just because he's
scary.
He's scary. Yeah.
Clark Wolf, Ben Bateman.
I think Wolf's experience in singles in particular is going to do a lot of favors there.
Other side of the bracket, you got Ethan Irwin and the new kid, you know, Chance Ellison.
Ooh, man. I've seen a lot of Chance. Chance is really good. I think Ethan's hungry though.
Ethan's hungry
because he had his chance.
He did.
Earlier
He was
this year.
3-0, loses to Andreyko. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say it's good. I think it's gonna be a good fight, but I think the hunger might push Ethan over the edge.
Okay, and then obviously you're going to pick yourself. So then you versus Ethan, you're going to take yourself all the way to the finals. So on the other side of the bracket there, you have Clark Wolf versus McWeeny?
Yeah.
So who do you got now?
Ooh. Again, I've seen what through team play, I've seen what Clark is capable of, along with Rachel, when she is like hungry and motivated. Not that she ever isn't, but I think the idea of becoming not just a teams champion, but becoming a singles champion, again, it goes to hunger. When people are so closely matched, it goes to hunger.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with Wolf. I'm going with Wolf.
So I like a Wolf Murrell matchup. That to me, that we've seen it before. We saw it in 2016. I think Wolf's a much different player.
That was a completely different era.
So a Wolf Murrell matchup. I like it. I like how honest you were on this show. I think we could have probably talked for another 2 hours if we wanted to easily. Pleasure to have you, my man. Check out Dan Murrell. You can follow him on Twitter. It's at Murrell Dan. Or is
at Murrell Dan.
At Murrell Dan. Watch them on Screen Junkies. They will have a home, I promise you, one way or another. And then anything else that people should be looking out for?
No, just again, we talked about it a little bit, but we're so excited to be part of Fandom now, and the opportunities that we're going to get. You know, it's stuff that we're not jumping into anything, but I just know from being in on a lot of different things that we are, number one, working on making everything that we currently do better, as we always try to be. But we're also working on some ideas for the future that I'm super excited about. So we feel very fortunate that we are still able to do what we love. And it's something we continue to love to do.
Well, there you go, guys. Once again, Dangerous Dan Murrell. And make sure that you subscribe to this podcast if you haven't done that already. Download it on Apple Podcasts or wherever else. And leave a comment, rate, review. Leave some comments on the YouTube channel. And we will catch you next time. That was it. That was the interview. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're joining us for the first time on Collider Video, hit that subscribe button, like, comment, do all that stuff. And remember, this is also on iTunes. If you're listening to iTunes right now, pull over and then rate it, subscribe it, do all that stuff. Hit pause on the treadmill for a second and let us know what you think about these shows, and we will continue to make more of them. You can find all your favorite shows from Collider on iTunes on the Collider Podcast Network. Thank you very much. See you next time.